The Stranger Things box set is out, and several people asked me to cover it, so here's my quick coverage of the adventures in the Stranger Things box set and everything you'll find inside of it. This set has a really strong theme. It is going deep and hard at the concept of the Stranger Things show. It wants to make you feel like you are a part of it. The characters matter, both your own and the concept of Eddie as a DM, and the characters that were played by the players, actors in the actual TV show. So it is really, really going into that theme. For the parents out there, this is not the first D&D product to swear, but it is the one that swears the most to date. It is written with the style of Eddie in mind and the show, and a lot of times, not a lot of times, but a number of times, the little call-outs that you'll see taped in places involve swear words. So depending on how you parent, this may not be your favorite thing, and you may want to keep the books to yourself because of that. I didn't see this as an attractive feature. It's not something I would have gone with personally in a product. I would rather they don't swear. I can add swear words when I need to and play with my friends. I don't need it written in the book. And I'd rather that all the materials be accessible to any age group, any parenting style, and so on. But it's not a major thing and does not majorly color how I view this product. I just want folks to be aware of that. So we're going to take a look at the adventures that are in this set and discuss them and give you a few tips for them. But I want to really look at the components because it's important to take a look at this starter set. This is not just, it is the sum of its parts. It is not just any one part. It's not just the adventures. It's the whole thing. And I think, what I would say as a top level review is if you love the Stranger Things show, and if you want to have a campaign that kind of fits into the vision of this, then this is going to be a great experience. If, on the other hand, you mildly like the Stranger Things show, and you're like, what I really most want is a super engrossing, awesome D&D adventure that, takes me from levels, 1 to 4 and gives me just an amazing story and all of that, then this may not be the set for you, because this set is going hard on the concept of Stranger Things, on the concept of this being what Eddie leaves behind for you, a trusted member of the high school, right? And that's the way that it's written, and it provides that kind of an experience. So it is not meant to be your favorite adventure ever. It's meant to be a really fun experience that feels like Stranger Things. With all of that said, let's now go down into my basement and see what is in this box set. All right, so here I am in my gaming room, and I'm going to take the top off of this Hellfire Club box set, and we can see we're immediately greeted by a pretty neat yearbook-style picture of the Hellfire Club. Really neat, all the actors there. And then we get a very cute, this just tells you what the approach of this box set is, right? An in-character write up from Eddie, the idea that these are the notes, the campaign that Eddie has left because he thinks he's graduated, right? So he's bequeathed this upon his graduation finally from high school for you to run this. When actually, if you've seen the show, you know what has happened to Eddie. But that is great, right? And it's a picture of Eddie being kind of a DM who wants to pass things on. And even if he's a little rough around the edges, right, he means really well. And he wants you to become a DM and use everything he's left for you. Really cool. And you'll see that sentiment carries throughout here with this sort of idea of things being taped on as notes, right? As if this is a box set that he's created for you. Now you will see there's a QR code that you can use. There are information on all the different components that are here. We're told how to unpack the box, and this quick start guide just kind of walks you through and shows you what to do. And you'll again see, immediately a taped little note here that has been left. I believe in you, and I've got notes like this throughout the adventure to help you run it. Really cool idea. And we get the idea of choosing a role. So this is something that if you saw my video on the starter set, the idea is, hey, you can swap roles, right? You can take turns being the DM one time, being a player the next. And it walks you through how to get started, what you should do, how you should use these adventures, which we'll do as well. And then it just gives you a pictorial overview of the different components, the DM screen, the maps, different handouts. character sheets, the adventures, the get started guide, dice, all of that that's in here. And you get a play guide. This is going to be very familiar to you if you have used the starter set. This will be a version of the rules that can help you run the game, good enough that if you don't have the player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, you can use this instead. It no longer refers to starter boards as the one in the starter set does, because we're now using character sheets. So it's kind of neat. You can use this as a way to sort of graduate. It still will walk you through things, and it provides all of the rules, but now it's, really taking a step up from the starter set's way of doing things to actually using the character sheets that are here. And the character sheets are really stylistic rather than being like the class boards, the character boards that are present in the starter set, which are really sort of different, right? They're atypical. This is now a typical experience. The art throughout this is like this. It's very cool, very evocative, really ties into the Netflix Stranger Things show. The booklets are all with this faux kind of aging treatment and different stickers, so, drawn art. And so it really does feel like something that Eddie could give to you. And I would just give full A+ on the concept of this starter set, what it's trying to do, the look and feel of it. It's all really gorgeous, just fantastic. I love this. Looks like this is the same font that was used for old basic adventures. So it's trying to go back to that era. It looks like what our modules look like when they're old and been on shelves forever. Really neat. So what do we get? Let's take a look. We get lots of different adventures, and these are all very small. Now, classic adventures were also pretty small in terms of page count, but you're going to see, these are very thin. You can see here, this is 11 pages for this first adventure. So we get the Vanishing Gnome for level 1. We get Scream of the Crop for level 2. Ballad of the Rat King for level 3. Devil Metal Die for level 3, kind of winding and concluding the campaign. And these adventures are all pretty excellent in terms of their execution on the theme. So the art of these will be, along the lines of what you'd expect for this adventure, to try to give you the feel for the concept of being these characters, these types of heroes in a campaign that Eddie would run. It's got a fairly good old school feel to it. The art is black and white and very nicely done. It is not, silly art or cartoon art when it comes to what's going on in the adventure, though it is often embellished or adorned with other things that look a little more like they've been drawn. So you can see here. All right, it has these kinds of embellishments, and then when it's really supposed to be by Eddie, it might be like a sticker, right? So it's got the visual quality of a sticker and a note that's been taped on there. So it's nicely done, but it's got a modern approach towards the organization and the information that you will find in the adventure. You'll also see locations where you have, color maps, right? So again, modernization of this, an approach towards cartography, and layout that you would not have seen in old classic D&D projects, which is great. It's nice to modernize elements. I'll also say the adventures themselves take a modern approach towards creating fun situations and encounters, better than many classic adventures would take. They're classic for their time, but they don't have that sort of modern approach towards adventure encounter design. I will say that at a high level, these adventures are rather simple. So they are styled in a simple manner. So you can feel, I think, the theme of what's going on. I think that's a purposeful decision to have these adventures not be overly complex or to have a long story arc that goes between them. They tend to be episodic, right? So you play through Ballad of the Rat King. It's not influenced by what happened in the previous two adventures. Right. And similarly, the last adventure doesn't have callbacks to NPCs. There are no recurring NPCs or locations or anything like that, even if they all kind of come from the concept of being in this area known as Grey Hawkins. So those are the 4 adventures that you get. Short, fun, not overly complex, not overly heavy on there's no giant narrative going on. They're just fun, classic feeling things. They feel like something that somebody in high school might have written up, though it's well executed, right? But it's that kind of, it hits the theme of what Eddie would have left you. We also get handouts. So there are some spoilers here, but you get, fun color handouts that you can give out to your party. Different things like a hellish contract or a reward poster, right? So we get different neat things that we can give out. And then we get the character sheets. These are really nice homages to what's called Goldenrod character sheets that existed in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, an old edition of D&D. And so we get Lady Applejack. We get her higher level versions. So you have a version for level 2 and a version for level 3. So that's pretty neat. We also get Nog the Dwarf. So Nog, again, has 3 character sheets that all come together. We have Sundar the Bold, and Sundar comes, again, 3 different versions. I should say that, you also have information on the back with all of your different features. We have Tear the Paladin, and he is a halfling paladin, which is fun. Will the Wise, very fun, our wizard. And so that is 5 different player handouts, levels 1 to 3. And then we have an insert here that has different maps. The maps are colorful, very nice. If you've seen Beetle and Grimm's types of maps, this can recreate those. Feels like they're inspired by those. And you've got all kinds of different dungeons. I'm not going to overly spoil, but you can see, the neat kind of embellishments that come around the outside of the art and that make it, pretty fun to have these kinds of adventures. Very neat, creative maps that hit upon the themes of the adventures. Then we have a neat, what doubles as a poster on one side, right? Very cool. So if you're looking for something fun to put in your gaming room, that can certainly double that way. And then we get a map of Greyhawkins itself, which is very fun. It's a play on words with the old Greyhawk campaign setting, which was the first campaign setting for D&D that was published by the company. And we've got lots of different locations that we can visit and go to during this series of adventures. We get 2 sets of punch-out tokens in different sizes, reflecting the different types of foes we'll find. They are double-sided. We get standees, so you can see you take these out and put the bases into them, so you can have a 3D standout for the characters. These are the 5 pre-gens. And then some larger monsters on there. A little bit of a spoiler there for you. But those are neat. I like the kind of classic, let's do it all black and white as a classic feel is fine when it's all done consistently. I appreciate it. And then we get a nice DM screen. So let's open that up. Really nice scenes, very evocative. They kind of play off of other DM screens that were made for previous editions with the approach to it, but it's a nice long DM screen. It's not as tall as sub DM screen. So it's that idea of sort of putting a page on its side, right, is the 8.5 by 11 on its side, and it's got 4 different panels, which is nice. And we'll take a look at the back in a second. So we get a map of Greyhawkins. We get different information on the skills that are out there, which is very nice to do. Actually, something that is often forgotten with a DM screen for a new game is what are the skills in the game. Whenever I'm running new role-playing games, because I run a lot of different games, it's kind of surprising how often I don't know what the skills are in the game because I don't know the game yet. And so this does assume that and tells you that typical difficulty classes, armor classes for objects, light sources, things like that. And then you get some actions that you can use and cover rules and then the conditions. So very useful. I think it's a neat idea for what's in this. No objections there with what it's doing. Other than the Greyhawkins map, it's not trying to be too specific to the adventure. And then you have to roll your checks for a false bottom, because there is indeed a false bottom here. You get your dice, and those can go back in here along with tokens. Once you punch them out from here, you can put them in these little trays, so that's nice. We get the combat tracker, which we saw with the starter set. A very nice sheet to use. And so we'll see if DMs start making that a habit. And then you also have these cards, which we get some on your turn combat walkthroughs, which are pretty nice. Different actions you can use. So that's nice reminders that you can give that out to the players, scatter them around the table. I think we do get 5. So every player, it assumes 5 players and everybody can get one. And then monster cards. So this is similar to the starter set, provides kind of neat information, but you can see the layout is very much in line with this starter set's art style, right? So it's this kind of art, looks almost like a sticker on here. It shows you what the token looks like, so you know which token to go after. And it gives you the full statistics on the back. And so all the different monsters show up here, including a couple of new ones that are there, like the Demo Bat, right? So those are kind of fun, Demo Dog. So you will get some new monsters in here that are specific to Stranger Things. And let's go ahead and do a bit of a spoiler because you can see the art is really fun. You'll recognize some of the art concepts of where these characters are going for. So commoners and different tokens that are here that'll be used. The Cultist of Demogorgon, Dardu, who is an NPC that you'll meet, the Demo Bat, the Demo Dog, Demodragon, very cool, Demogorgon Spawn. So all of these have different characteristics, different stat blocks that are unique and new. But then we have others like the Dretch, which will be like you've seen if you have the Monster Manual or other sources. We have some NPCs again that'll show up. Giant Corrupted Rat, Giant Spider, Null Warrior. Look at that awesome art. Goblin Warrior, the Guard. I like the little drawing of Halt, right? Very nice, like hand-drawn addition. Hellhound. So you can see the artistic style is really cool, right? Really neat what's been done here to look at this. The Corex, Medusa, very fun. Myconid Adult there is a very different Myconid than what you see in the art for the Monster Manual. Needleblight, very cool. Riley June, an NPC. The Scarecrow, the Shadow, Shrieker Fungus, Swarm of Corrupted Rats, Vine Blight Tangler, and Violet Fungus. So really neat assortment of monsters. They shine in these adventures, and they, of course, are super useful. One of the things that you could do, because this is low-level content, is if you have the starter set and you have this set, well, those things can come together and give you more options to use more monster cards, which is pretty neat. Similarly, we have 2 other things in here. We have spell cards and we have magic items. And so if you liked how in the starter set, you were able to use spell cards and magic item cards as reward, this extends the utility of that. It is a slightly different look and feel here to reflect the box set's art, but still very useful. So with the spells, you're going to see that the art style kind of tells you what the type of spell is a little bit. Like we get, cone reminders for color spray, that you're going to touch somebody to give invisibility or magic weapon. And then we get the art of the magic items, which is pretty nicely done. There's some neat changes like Holly's handy haversack. The art is neat for Spike's shield. Cloak of Bellowing, right? So them nice options here, and I won't show everything that's here, but you get a feel for some of the types of options that you will have that come in the spells and magic item piles. So that's pretty neat if you like using those options. I do, I think I said the same thing for the starter set, which is that when you use these, it's cool, but, as soon as you want something else, now you've got a combination of magic item cards, and you have to just tell someone to write something down, or you've got to make your own magic cards, which could be cool. Make your own spell cards or magic cards and print them out and give them out. That's an option as people level up or you develop your own adventures. You could do that. You do get the place to store this all back in, so you can put your tokens here and put the cards back and assemble the whole box again. It's not too hard to put back together, which is good, so you can keep using that set. And that's what's in the box. There is no secret door underneath, unfortunately, so that is the entirety of what you'll find in this set. So overall, looking at the components, I think that this is a really nice set. I love the theme of it. I love the work that was put into making this feel like an experience, like you want to play through something that's Stranger Things related. This is delivering on that. And that's where including this DM screen, which we didn't get a DM screen with the starter set, I think it makes sense here because you're trying to have that stronger theme. So just like I've got an AC Inc. DM screen up here, which helps people feel like they're playing Acquisitions Incorporated. Having something that helps you feel like you're in the Hellfire Club and part of these adventures makes a lot of sense, right? We want that presence to be here, just as it is in the text of the adventures and in the art of everything in your character sheets. That theme is carrying through, and that's really strong. So let's start by just reviewing some of the basics of what you'll see in this product. So each of these adventures, and here we're going to start with the Vanishing Gnome, and I'm showing off the version that's in D&D Beyond because it's easier for me to talk to you and read it. Great art, upside down and neat idea. The characters here, right? All neat in terms of how it's presented. And you've got, sidebars. You can see a little bit of one here that's really neat. This one says, "Don't let anyone from Hawkins PD catch you with this. Officer Callahan still thinks I stole all those lawn gnomes that went missing a few years back. Consider this booklet evidence." So they're fun talking points like that. And at times these callouts are instructional and encouraging you to deal with certain types of typical player behavior. So they can be things like this that are helpful to a DM who's new, who's trying to run this material. So one of the sections that they have here is key plot points, and you'll find this in every adventure. So it breaks down, and by the way, spoilers, right? Spoilers are here because this is reviewing the adventure. Hopefully that's clear. So if you're a player, go away and this is the one that you want to run for the rest of the group, and then you'll be the DM for this one. So it breaks down the plot points. What are the key plot points, right? This NPC is going to contact the characters, challenging them to find them in the Dungeon of Shadows. Very simple, high school-like premise. It's the kind of thing I might have come up with back then on a good day. Plot point 2, the characters navigate the Dungeon of Shadows in search of Fizzlebin, who calls them out from his hiding place in a twisted reflection of the dungeon connected to a mysterious realm known as the Veil of Shadows. And this will be very familiar to folks who've seen the characters in the TV show navigate the Upside Down. You get this sort of feel from it, moats hanging in the air and things like that, and twisted vines and stuff like that. Plot point 3, a spawn of Demodragon, a demon lord, has escaped the Veil of Shadows. The characters first encounter the creature in the Dungeon of Shadows, but it likely escapes. Plot point 4, after defeating the Demogorgon spawn, the characters find Fizzlebin and earn the gnome's reward. Very simple premise, right? So it just breaks things down there. Then we get a DM preparation section, and this says like what to read, what the different parts to read, and what things to get out and familiarize yourself with. So you want to break out the dungeon, the monster for the Demogorgon spawn, for Fizzlebin, and as you saw, these all have these nice, cool cards. So you review those monsters and pull them out of the box so you have them, and then pull out the magic items that also will be available as treasure, so you also know what they do and are ready for them. Each of these booklets has the player assistance section of saying, hey, maybe you want to make one of your players run monsters or be a rules consultant with the basic rules that are provided there, right? Here in D&D Beyond, it's the basic rules that you would open up that are available for free, or you can use the rules booklet that's included with the box set. So other than that, it's going to be a pretty typical background to the adventure background, and then we'll go into the map and use and go through the different areas depending on where they choose to explore. So here's an example of a map. This one's for this first Dungeon of Shadows in the Vanishing Gnome adventure. You can see that in the player version, there are no tokens, no traps, right? It just shows you this. It does have a little bit of spoilers. Like, for example, there is an upside down version of the map, which you see on the right, versus the one on the left that you start in. And also the layout of the rooms or the maze, that is all shown to your players, even if they don't see monster tokens and so on. Quick spoiler, there's lots of icons and things on there that reveal things to you that your players won't see. Now, I said this in my starter set review, and I'll say it again here. I would recommend that when you put down this poster map before play, I would put cloth maps down on the areas that they don't start in. And so, for example, I would put a piece of cloth over this room and each of the rooms to the north. That would be one cloth napkin each to cover that up. I would also put one on the areas that are like contiguous corridors. And I would then put one over the whole maze area. And I would do that on both sides of the map. That way, it creates a little more excitement to reveal things and want to open these areas. Now, with the maze, once they go in there, yep, they can see the whole maze, and that's fine. But what they don't know are the things that are only on your map. And so that's, fun that you've got some secrets preserved versus showing them the entire map all at once. And then it, becomes like you're almost making information based on that rather than the way I think the adventure intends. So, but, either way, it'll be fine. It's not a major problem. It's just a thing you want to think about with your approach to how you show these maps and what's on them. So some advice I would give in area D3, which is that labyrinth of doom, there are some features in that area that make it difficult, and the monster is pretty challenging. So you might consider doing things like, for the traps, lowering the damage to one smaller die from a D6 to a D4. That might be good if you're dealing with new players who you think may not use the most optimal tactics, and you want them to sort of not feel too beat up initially and to lean more into the fun of it and the perceived horror of it than actual horror of seeing your hit points vanish because you're level 1 characters. So that might be preferable, and then you can feel a little better about that fight with them. It's also important to note that creature has instructions. When it reaches a certain hit point level, it's going to retreat, right? Again, I'm doing spoilers. I'll try to keep it a little bit vague, but it's important, you want to retreat because it's not supposed to fight to the death right now. Now, that retreating is important because in this case, it's going to go through a secret door. So you want to make sure that it can get to that. It may provoke attacks of opportunity to do so. It probably shouldn't do so. It can disengage, right? Thinking about that, it doesn't want to sacrifice itself if it has very low hit points. It wants to disengage and then get out through the secret door. So you want to be able to make that work because that's what the adventure is going through. And this is an important part to think about. You can change the rules to make fun, right? The number one objective when you're running some set like this is fun. So if the secret door should be in a different place so that it can escape because that's fun, then it can do so. And maybe it locks the secret door so it isn't easy to open, right? That's something that you can consider, or it can quickly get around the corner and then nobody knows where it went. Those are important things that you can play with and decide how you want to do that to make it a better experience. In the same way, if this monster is really just tearing everybody apart, maybe it flees with more hit points because it actually wants to let the characters have a chance to recover. And there are, potions they can find. Maybe they can find some more here. You can make this a fun experience, toggle those dials the way that you want to as to what is the difficulty, the challenge, and the fun reward. Area D4, the Forge, is a really neat place. I love that this exists in an adventure that newer players might be accessing. It is a really good sign of for players to an important lesson for players to understand that, hey, you don't just fight everything. And in fact, not fighting could lead to some great things. And this is really neat. If you've seen the D&D movie and you've seen where Olga's axe ends up being like fire coated, right? This can give you some of the ideas for visuals that you can add to the weapons that end up in the Forge. And a number of players can benefit from this. You could also consider that if somebody doesn't really use weapons, maybe they can get some kind of fire effect added to their implement that could just happen once or twice, right? Just something fun to give them that feel that they got a neat thing out of this would be really neat, right? Would help them enjoy that experience too and be part of it so they don't feel left out. It's not like this has to be the everybody gets a trophy type thing, but you're trying to create a neat experience and the sense of the show, and so that could be really neat. Or maybe you'd rather just say, this is a case where a couple of characters get to shine, and so be it. Those that wield weapons, here's what they get. And maybe in some other encounter, you could add something that helps the casters get something neat. Area D5 has a number of sort of secret things that you can find out by interacting, right? You can study the statue, you can search for what's in there. And this is a case where if your players are new, or if they're not used to this sort of play of being a little more investigative, exploring in their approach, you may need to give them some prompts. And that can be a fun thing to do to help your players kind of become the kinds of players who want to mess with the room, who want to ask questions of you and give you ideas too. Because when characters ask questions, then you get to provide an answer your way. And that's sort of the neat interplay that happens back and forth in D&D or other role-playing games, right? So that's the kind of thing where you might say, like, if they just want to slay whatever's in here and then head out, that's where you can say, so before you do that, you've seen this statue. Why don't you give me a perception check? And then the character could notice, there's some strange, the way this statue is done is kind of strange. And then you've told them there's something strange. Now they can say, okay, well, I want to come up to it. And, could I make a history check or a perception check or an investigation check? And you can feed off of that to provide some of the information that's here, but help encourage them to ask questions like that about the things that are interesting in different rooms. And if a room has something interesting, but nothing about it, you can choose to add embellishments you want. It doesn't have to be, a big reward or treasure, but just some knowledge. Like, yeah, you think this, maybe was made by dwarves, or the goblins fashioned this. Perhaps the dwarven smiths you met, they have done this, right? That can just be fun information that adds to things and encourages players to ask questions about the environment. And not everything has to be a skill check. You don't necessarily need to do that. Every DM, I think, has to find their approach of how much they want to make people roll versus just provide answers. Is it more important to interact with something or roll dice and get a certain result? That's up to you, but you can play with that. I personally like rolls. I like to encourage players to engage with the dice and move. And I will, to those players, then describe things, even if it isn't something particularly important, just give them a little something, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of lore, so that it encourages that sort of continued behavior of asking about your environment. When the characters reach area S1, which is the first reverse chamber, the first chamber they're in, now it's the shadow version of it. This is really a fun area. Definitely you want them to mess with the body that they find in there, and the body will give rise to the surprise of the shadow coming out of it. Really cool. That's a really neat way that you can surprise the characters, right? Give them a perception check. There's something off about their eyes or, their neck. It has a deep shadow, and you look closely, you lean in, and that's when this thing comes out, right? You could, depending on how you like to ham things up, this can be a really fun place to lean into that experience. I don't know if you want to lower the lights and put a flashlight in front of your face, 80s style, but you can certainly do something, depending on what you like, to make it a really interesting and memorable moment. And it helps broadcast, as well as the handout that they'll find on the body. It helps show we're in a different place now, right? And the environmental choices of what's going on here in these eerie chambers, feeling like the upside down, right? That delivers on this expectation that you would have from being a Stranger Things fan. So definitely lean in on that. So when they're in the area of shadow, one of the things that I'd underscore is this instruction you see here on the screen from earlier on, where it says, don't forget that your NPC can talk to the characters whenever you, the DM, want it to happen. So this can be your voice, right? The gnome can speak to the characters in their heads and say, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing? Or have you considered? Or might I suggest, right? You can decide how to do that. But this can be really important if the characters are doing something that's going to go off the rails and cause trouble rather than fun, if they're going to really put themselves in a situation from which they can't bounce back, right? So for example, in the Forge, S4, that Forge in the Shadow version is terribly dangerous. And the box text, it says, rises from the shadow of the Forge as to where the Demodragon is. It's important to note that is from behind, and the image, the art actually shows that, so you could show them that art to show that it's coming from behind the Forge, not in the Forge. The Forge is really lethal, and especially to the characters, but to it as well. It does 4d8 damage, so 4d8 is a serious amount of damage that can take out any character. It also is a huge setback to this Demodragon spawn, which, by the way, has regeneration. So by the time they face it, it's probably fully healed again. The characters may not be fully healed. So keep an eye on how many hit points they have. You can always ask the characters. And you can say to them through Fizzleben, you can say like, hey, guys, Fizzleben can say, are you a little hurt? Maybe you should stop and heal each other. Find some potions. Have you looked in this room? Whatever you need to do to kind of get into a position where you think they can take on this threat based on what you saw in the first battle, right? If it was that hard to get the monster to 25 hit points or lower, can they defeat it if it's healed? maybe it hasn't fully healed, right? It's up to you to decide that. And maybe Fizzleman can say to them, hey, that forge looks really dangerous, right? And they could try to push him in there, and that might be a big advantage. So you can keep that in the back of your mind as options to deal with, toggles to play with, so that you can change up the lethality of this and maybe help them out. So important that the NPC can speak at any time and give that advice and act as your voice in the game. So depending on the order that they tackle these rooms, they may face the Demodragon right at the end, or it may be that they end by finding the altar. There's some kind of story aspects to the altar of Vecna there that resonate with people who enjoy the show. But once they have accomplished the task, the gnome will reach out and say, hey, if you're ready, come back to me and I can give you a reward. And then that will end the adventure. And as I said before, these adventures don't really link together. So you complete Vanishing Gnome and you're ready for adventure number 2. Adventure number 2, Scream of the Crop, is a very neat adventure. I really like how it calls back specifically to one of the seasons of the show. It gets you, underground in these burrowed out, vine-covered moats hanging in the air kind of feeling, where that difference between the Upside Down and our world is thin. It also brings in the demo dogs, which are pretty interesting as threats. It's a lot of fun. And the main concept is, you're going to arrive in this place and you're going to meet a farmer who needs help. The crops are all falling apart. There's a little bit that's kind of fun you can have fun with a scarecrow that is there described in the box text that you read out. But then at some opportune time, you can sort of say like, well, you don't see the scarecrow anymore. And I think this is one of these cases where you want to just say, the players could get derailed there. So what you might have is if you describe the missing scarecrow and the players immediately want to go after the scarecrow, the truth is you need to get them to the halfling farmer to have that information. You don't have to, but it will be a little smoother that way when they have the full information in quest. I'm solving everything and then showing up. So what you might do is have them hear someone calling, and when they turn and look down the road, they can see, the farmer waving to them, right? That kind of says to them, come this way rather than go on a scarecrow hunt. Later, they could check out, and you could even say, you could look for the scarecrow or try to follow its tracks later. You would guess that any tracks won't fade anytime soon, right? But this guy is calling for you and may have information. And get them to that farmer, because it's fun to have this vanishing scarecrow that happens in this as soon as you arrive, but you do want to get to the farmer and have the farmer interact with him. The farmer will tell him, that his daughter's missing, and this is the kind of really what the mission is as much as anything else is find Riley Jean, I think her name is. And so that becomes really the most important part in this adventure. And Riley June is an important piece, just as in the first adventure, we talked about how that gnome can get in your head and can give you advice and act as the DM's voice to the players, right? That's really important because you can kind of set them right. In this adventure, there is a lot that they can face. It can get pretty dangerous, even though they are now level 2. So that's important to note. They are now playing their level 2 character sheets for this adventure. But still with those dangers, they could get in over their heads, or they could kind of end up getting to Riley June too quickly or anything like that. So one of the things you could do is have some sort of psychic connection between Riley June and one of the players. She is unconscious. Again, spoilers. But maybe they're getting sort of dreamlike images through the connections, the psychic connections that happen in Greyhawkins. And so, one of the players could maybe get like images, and they could sense, you think that's to the right or the left, or make a check to see if you can figure out if it's to the right or the left in the tunnels where you should go. But the characters are going to end up exploring these tunnels. They can get lost. It is quite a map that you can, of course, they'll have the map to look at. In fact, let's look at that player map. So there's the player map. So you can see there it's got a number of choices that you can get. In fact, where to enter is one of the big choices. So going back to that, that's where you might say, yeah, did you want to go look for that scarecrow that went missing? Well, that's one of the ways that they can find a hole that leads down, or they could investigate various areas of the farm. that introduction that the farmer gives various things that the characters can explore. And based on where they decide to explore, they can end up finding a tunnel going down. So you as DM do not know where they will appear. They will then move unpredictably down these different corridors, and they could end up, going in circles or in a particular direction. They might get right to the end. You don't know. So if you want to apply some direction, you could use this sort of visions from Riley June. Once they rescue her, maybe she can share some information of what she's seen, and they can make that decision of whether they want to escape with her or adventure and discover a few more things. She is located right by the end of what you need to take care of. So in that sense, once you find her, you're going to rescue her and end the threat, and then you're going to probably want to get out. But it's up to those characters. She will certainly want to be led to an exit, but then the characters could explore additional areas if they want to. It's pretty neat. I like the types of things they find. The way these encounters are set up are very good. There's a lot of nice horror potential, and so think about those scenes as you review them. How do you want to explain the vines along the walls, and then that when someone's sitting there, maybe someone's like with their back against this vine covered wall, and you want to tell one of the characters, you think you see your friend. The vines are slowly reaching out for them. Roll initiative, right? That kind of thing. You can decide how you want to lean into that horror aspect and create these fun situations out of these encounters. And the various monsters that you're given to play with are pretty neat. There is a neat story here about the Golthius tree and the vampire that came before. It can create a lot of uncertainty and doubt until they figure out the story, which can be nice and rewarding. There are some dangers here. I mean, an Ankeg is a no-joke creature, and it's not the only thing they're going to face. So they may need some means with which to heal themselves. So you could think about how to do that if they need to. Again, death is fine, right? But it's just you want it to be a fun time. So die well, but also maybe they don't need to just TPK. And so helping them out of that, maybe they come back out for a break, and the halfling can help them heal up. There's some options there for how they handle these dangers. You can play with it, but you want to facilitate a fun session, even if it is a TPK, that at least it's a fun situation before the entire party is defeated. Similarly, Riley June, can die, and that's a possibility. So thinking through that and how to handle that is good. The ending certainly handles that, right? You're going back to the farmer, and they will react to what has happened. But you want to kind of think through that if that's going to be disappointing. And, we obviously want consequences to what's happening, but making sure that it's fair and that the players understand that it was a fair chance that they had makes it much more rewarding. Adventure number 3 is the Ballad of the Rat King. This is also fun adventure. One of the ones I really enjoy in terms of what it's the setting tone. This idea of these creepy, corrupted rats and the Pied Piper behind them is pretty neat. It's presented as a mystery. It is, but it's also not a difficult mystery. The map is pretty confined, and you really do get to go out there, visit these homes, and sort of trigger the information that will eventually solve itself. It's not one where you will scratch your head and not know what happened, because the act of being deputized, which you will be, to then explore these, interrogate the people, question the people who are in this dock ward, will by the nature of it reveal things, and the end will come for you in a fun way. So this is for 3rd level characters now. We've leveled up again. So we're now using the final version of the characters that appears in the set. And there is a map that will be presented. There's some really neat art that you'll find here. And so when we get to our map and we've been deputized, the players are going to have this version of the map to fill in. This does include a very obvious, probably there's a secret door here or another entrance from somewhere, and that's fine. It's okay. But it at least gives you a nice setup, a way to drive the action. And I think that's what makes this a simple mystery to run. And if you haven't run mysteries before, it's a nice introduction to get started. I've taken a cut that you can find on the DM's Guild. The Adventure of the Artifact provides a different way of tackling a mystery that I think is relatively easy for DMs to run, but also very fun. So I like mysteries, and I appreciate that this is trying to create a mystery that is bounded and relatively simple, right? You will necessarily stumble upon its conclusion. When you're going through this, one of the first places that's spelled out in the adventure is the cobbler. And the cobbler, like many of these first ones, has 2 different rooms. And what's interesting about the cobbler is that they are acting in a manner that's sort of like a red herring, which is like false information, right? They are acting like they are guilty, and that's fine. But it can lead to players, especially young players, jumping to conclusions. You're lying to us, we will murder you, for example, right? Things that I know when I've run tables for middle school players, that's what they would do. They would begin stabbing this person and, why are you evil? And they're not. They're just, their motives are a little weird, right? They have captured a rat and they don't know what to do about it. And they feel like they shouldn't have maybe done this. Maybe they should have reported it, right? You can think about how you want to voice, and this is what I would encourage you to do. Think about how to explain what this character has done so that you can say it in a convincing way in character as this person. And then as DM say, and, make me a check. Yep, that's what this person really does mean that, right? Enough people try to roll insight checks and they will find, no, really, this person's just kind of feeling protective because they're not sure they made the right decision and they've got this thing trapped and they don't want to hurt an animal necessarily, but it's also really weird and dangerous. And they just don't want to confess to it because they feel like maybe you will think they're guilty, right? It's a little confusing for players when that's playing out. So feel free to, if you have to, speak to them through the character, give them checks to confirm it. And if all else fails, say, hey, I just want to make sure, I don't want us to be confused. Your characters know the following. This person felt this way, so they didn't tell you the truth at first for these reasons. And that I don't want you to get confused as players and think that they are criminals or guilty or something like that. This is not the person you're looking for, right? So if you need to, you can break that down and that's okay. This adventure also has a lot of information that's provided in stages, which is good, but it also means people can jump to conclusions, right? You've got these fancy boots. Why? Is it because you're a criminal? No, it's pointing to the criminal, but you don't know enough yet to figure that out. So feel free to draw the connections between these clues as needed if your players need it, right? If they are spinning out of control of why this person had weird fancy boots that a customer hadn't picked up and someone else talks about a flute, you could say like, yeah, there was a person who was always talking about how they needed boots and they played the flute. Now you've drawn the line for them, right? If need be. This is a short enough adventure that, this is just 11 pages. So, you do not need to create a super complex situation. It's better to go for simplicity and let it play out because the fun will be rather confined. So don't have them spend a large part of the time in this adventure confused. You want them having fun, getting clues and drawing lines between them, right? And if you don't want to give something away, you can also say like, I'm just going to say as DM, you're not sure that conclusion is one that you can take right now, or you would probably not jump to that conclusion of, oh, this person's evil, or that person's good, right? Like if they're off kilter, you can give them a bit of a clue to let them know that they probably want to wait until they have more information, right? And that can help. Similarly, when they go to the tailor, right, the tailor is evil, but they're not the culprit, right? It's not quite a red herring because you should be able to figure that out. But if for some reason the characters aren't figuring that out, you can kind of say, this is unfortunately unrelated, but they have some information there that can help you, right? We get some really neat things like, the NPCs that are running the shop that's like the mall episodes that have our 2 characters who work at the ice cream shop, right? Really fun. I like that a lot. The herbalist shop is, again, something that maybe the players might get a little confused about it, but you can help them understand, give them that clarity of what is a clue, what isn't, what they know to be true versus might be just a suspicion or a theory that they need more data to back up. And of course, the resolution is that if they do check out all the places, they will find some clear signs of trouble that's taking place. And it's in this particular house where someone used to live. And so those clues start pointing to a particular place. If you can just get them patient enough to check out most, if not all of the locations, it solves itself, right? They will know what is happening. And worst case, the enemy can show up, right? If they're just sitting around in this house, the enemy can show up. But hopefully they will figure it out. And then they will mount a plan. And I think what I really like about this adventure is that idea that encourages a plan. So I would try to get that situation to where they figure it out well enough that you go, yep, that is plausible. This seems plausible to you. And then they can say, okay, what do we want to do, right? Do we want to wait in the home? Do we want to go seek them out by that weird grate that we saw? This is where it pays out, and they get to concoct a plan. Simple, not, they don't need to go overboard, but they can decide where they want to go and then drive that encounter. And that's kind of fun. And playing up that, the NPC Corax is fun. As they've written it here, Corax and the rats are irredeemable, right? They fight to the death. So you could think about whether that's something you think is good. And as play progresses, do the characters feel this way? Like, do they want to capture this person rather than have them die? Feel free to change that if you want this to be a story of redemption, because what drove them here isn't, could maybe be reversible. That's up to you, and playing off of how the players are feeling about it and their characters. They get a lot of money. One of the things that happens in these kinds of ventures is it's a little bit like a one-shot type of experience. What are you going to do with that money? Think about whether these characters are really being used for, like, are you going to play this box set and then be done and make different characters to play a different role-playing game or a different session of D&D? If so, give them something to spend this gold on, right? Maybe they can get different alchemical items. Maybe they can buy minor magic item or even just healing potions that would be something useful to them, right? And let them carry that into the next adventure. They could buy, they're here in a town, so they could perhaps buy things with that gold that they've earned so far. Otherwise, it's just earning gold, but they don't get to do anything during this whole adventure, right? So it might be fun to give them something that they could pool their money towards and buy something neat. Our last adventure, Devil Metal Die. So they stay third level, right? They were third level last time. They continue to be third level in this adventure. So the good news is they should know their characters pretty well, right? This is an opportunity to, again, play your level 3 character. So hopefully if there are any features they've missed, you might review the character sheets and say, hey, you haven't been using this feature, or encourage them to look at a particular feature that they're not using optimally or as often, or spells they aren't using. This can be a nice time to, during the break between the two sessions, talk to them about it. Devil Metal Die is a fun, very Eddie Munson type of concept, right? Here, the idea is that you're going to hell on this challenge, that you're going to accept and go to the 9 hells and fight in the infamous Hellfire Dome. And story-wise, it's playing two things, right? One is the idea of this is what's happening to your characters, right? But also that this is, as players and as characters, your introduction to the Hellfire Club. So at the end of this, you are now a member of the Hellfire Club, right? And that's a really neat idea. It's actually really cool for if you were running a school club, right? This would be a fun way to do it. Again, I don't love the fact that there's swear words throughout this. So, you've got to be careful, because some parents would not like that if you're a teacher or administrator, and you want to be careful with if players were running these, or DMs were running this, who are high schoolers, even though obviously they've heard swear words and so on, or even in middle school, it just gets a little touchy. So you want to think through that, or put tape up over those words or something like that, so that you can work through that. But I think the concept is really neat. If you were in a school club and you played through this set to join the school club, is, I think, really neat. So you're going to accept a deal with a devil, and we get sort of Eddie as this devil form that he has imagined himself as in this adventure that he theoretically wrote. It's a fun concept. And then what you're doing is sort of competing and going through these different rooms to explore them, such that you are winning the acclaim of all these devils that are watching in this arena. and complete the goals, and then you can go back to your world. The main NPC that they will meet is Dardu the Banished, which is, an anagram of Edward, which is a very classic thing to do with names in Dungeons and Dragons adventures. So you can let your players figure that out and then reward them and give them heroic inspiration when they figure that out. And they have to complete all of these challenges in order to join the Hellfire Club. But also there is a special hook here, which is that if they go unconscious, they can be offered a contract, and the terms of that are a bit nefarious, but if you want to keep living and keep playing, and it's a fun concept. I like that. I think it's pretty neat. The various encounters here are rather simple. It's sort of like semi-fantastic room with interesting features because it's in hell, and you're fighting things, and if you do cool things, then people shower you with gold for having accomplished missions. I don't think it necessarily makes it better or worse for younger players. I've seen young players enjoy really cool stories and really complex stories. So I don't think it's just that, but it is meant to be this sort of more popcorn, movie rather than a highbrow experience, which is fine. The adventure does try to give you various experiences. So for example, in the Fiend feud, there are questions that are given to the players. If you have experienced players, these will probably be pretty easy. If you have young, new players, well, you're just going to be saying things like, what creature loves brains but loathes zombies, and they may not have any idea what that creature is. And so, it might feel a little unfair to them or boring. They might lose a little bit of attention span if you have that sort of audience. So you might think about whether you could change these up, right? Maybe it should be trivia about the show. That ties into it in some way, or that's directly linked to the show, right? What is a creature that looks like a dog but has a plant-like head that is full of teeth, right? And maybe that's the question that should be there, and just be a little simpler, or at least change out a couple. So it's worth considering. Some of these battles, some players, especially experienced players, may overthink them, expecting there to be more when it's not. It's just kill all the monsters. So you may want to give tips from time to time about the nature of these challenges to your players. There are some neat concepts in these encounters, right? So the invisible imp that whispers what you should do to turn on the person that's actually currently fighting with you is interesting. Different tables and players will handle that differently. So I like that concept. Just a little chaos to see how it turns out and how the players react. The Sanctuary of Yunogu brings back the gnolls that you defeated in the very first adventure. And that's where it might make sense, if you can, in the first adventure, make one of the gnolls really distinctive, right? It has a certain type of piercing or something like that, a tattoo on its forehead, and then they see the same one here, right? That's where they'll know, oh, wow, the one you killed went to hell, and here it is. Now, its speech will, this hairless gnoll, does kind of go like, it's you again, right? So it does kind of do that, but make sure to reinforce that so it really plays well, so they know like, oh, these are the ones you defeated them, and you sent them to hell, and now you're facing them again, because that's really fun. The Infernal Court is one with Judge Judy. When you take them on, it may be a little confusing as to exactly how this should play out, but the reality is they have a lot of options here as it's presented. So that's important that, you can encourage the players to just do is that what you want to do? You tell me, it's fine. Tell me how you want to handle this situation. Then that can be interesting, and then you play off of it. And one of the ways you can do that is with the reaction of the crowd, right? The crowd, if they're excited when they attack the judge, well, now that's clearly an option that the crowd is amazed and delighted by, then that's totally fine. Similarly, when it comes to there's an encounter with the Infernal Prison, and there is a jailer who has a bunch of cells, and there's one of them that has nobody in it, that he kind of says, hey, you get in there, right? And it's a bit of a weird setup, but the reality is there's a lot of freedom here, and they really can do whatever they want. They could immediately attack. They can try to free prisoners. They can go into the cell and then hatch a plan. It's really up to them to how they will approach it. And so again, have the crowd encourage them and then kind of be amazed by anything they do. Let them know that, yeah, it's up to you. You can do whatever you'd like. Maybe even Eddie the Banished can fly overhead and go, oh, interesting. That's what you're going for, right? Just lets them know that whatever they're thinking of isn't necessarily a problem. And it's, the what are you going to do now? All right, you started this way. What are you going to do now, right? That becomes interesting. And they should be aware that, well, some of these creatures may fight with you, right? May stand with you, especially once you realize, well, if you went into the jail cell, now you're jailed for eternity. So maybe you don't want that. So then you realize, well, maybe we have to escape and recruit people as we escape, right? You can end up encouraging that through either the actions of other cellmates or the crowd or Eddie as need be. Or, I'm sorry, Dardu. Yes, Dardu the Banished. So then the last room that they have is the Demodragon lair. And this is a formidable creature. Finally, we get to our last challenge, the Demodragon lair. And this creature has some great art. It's also quite fearsome. There are a couple things about it that make it tough. The benefit is the characters get a short rest, so they get to spend some hit dice and hopefully heal up. You might want to consider allowing them to heal up completely. In fact, you might even give them a long rest. The reason is this thing has 110 hit points and it regenerates 10 hit points every round. Nothing is going to stop that regeneration as written. So you might want to think about how that's going to fare against these level 3 characters who tend to have like 20 some odd hit points, right? And the breath weapon of this dragon does 22. So you're really close to wiping out the cleric and the rogue just with a single breath. And if for some reason it recharges and you get 2, they're toast. Or if it breathes and then attacks them in a later round, they're going to be in trouble. Similarly, the lava does 60-10 damage. So, doing more than 30 points of damage for when you first enter and when you start your turn, they will die if they hit the lava. So that's fine, especially given the contract. So I think here's what you want to do. What I would recommend thinking about it and, adjust these tactics as you see the adventure playing out. But depending on how good your characters are and whether they've accepted the contract already to come back, make a deal with the dead, right? If there are with the devils, this is an excellent point. If they've just skated through and everything's been easy, well, here's where you can bring them down, easily with either the terrain or the attacks of this creature, and offer them that contract, and they'll probably accept because they're so close to the end. You also can then be a lot more efficient with your attacks, right? Get as many characters as possible in that breath weapon, line them up, provoke an attack of opportunity since you heal 10 hit points every round, and line up the characters in optimal fashion and breathe on them and give them that amazing challenge. If, on the other hand, the characters have been feeling kind of beaten up and they've already been accepting the contract, then maybe this is a time to lower the challenge a notch. Right? Don't be as efficient. Yes, provoke from a character to breathe, but breathe so that you breathe on 2 of them, right? Maybe it likes being perched on those, and this could even be something they could pick up with an insight check. It likes to be on these bridges near the lava. So you could have it always kind of moving around to be positioned on one of those bridges, and that provokes an attack of opportunity. But it also means that it's in a place where it could be toppled if somehow you could break the bridge or shove it off. It is a huge creature, so that's constraints on being pushed. But you could change it up based on maybe it's crumbling on the platforms, or there could be something that players could do to get it into the lava, because then this thing does not resist the lava, and that would be a huge blow if it were to be in the lava. That might end the combat right there. So you can think about that as a possibility. Or just maybe lower down the regeneration a bit if the characters have been getting beat up a lot by this adventure or series of adventures. That's where you could decide, I'm going to play a little nicer. I'm going to take down its regeneration to be 5, or maybe that the regeneration doesn't work if it takes a certain type of damage, like fire damage, right? And that could also clue them into the possibility of if somehow you can get it to take lava damage, because fire seems to stop the regeneration. That would be a handy thing. But as written, nothing stops its regeneration, and it has this very tough breath weapon And its damage as well is pretty reasonable. So it is a formidable challenge for your characters. Definitely something they can feel good about besting. And I think that's what the adventure is going for. They want this to feel like a thrilling devilish dragon fight themed with the Stranger Things elements. Very nicely done. Two-headed monstrosity here. Draconic monstrosity. Hellish. And so at the end of it, if you've survived this, you're going to feel great, and maybe went through several lives to do it, and that can be fine, and therefore the challenge works okay. So again, think about the feel of what you want, right? If what you want is you made this contract and you're coming back from death and doing that, well, then that can be interesting. One of the rewards will be that the contract is nullified. So from that perspective, this battle can be a lot of fun to just have it be coming back from death and fighting, and but in my experience, when characters are too beat up, like you've been killed and brought up over and over again, it's not quite as much fun. So it's a tough balance, this fight. I have not run that, so I have not been able to see how it works. But my advice is think about how easy or hard it's been to get here. Think about what you think your players will enjoy in terms of, would they enjoy it if they went down to 0 hit points, either got the contract or the contract kicks in again, and they make that decision with that chance of forfeiting their soul, even if later that's going to be pardoned. Is that fun? Is that neat? Will my players enjoy this? And then maybe you want to really just run it as written and inflict the pain and see them coming back with this contract due to the contract. If that's neat, awesome. If that will be something that might tire your characters a bit and they go, oh, God, I died again, that's not fun. Well, then, maybe find some ways to step that down. And that's a good time where you can say, well, there is that lava. This monster doesn't seem to like the lava, right? It's staying, it seems to like these perches that put it above the lava and away from its heat. Okay. That could be something they could use. And then that's more rewarding to your players. So play it by ear, adjust it for your players so that you end up with a neat finish to this series. At the end, you get to join the Hellfire Club. And one of the things you could do is share this cute note. It's really nice. I think some of these call outs can be really fun. And you may want to go through adventure and sort of pick some of these that you really liked and share them with the players, because they're really sweet and sort of in that lore of Stranger Things. Do you want to give this to somebody who's a player and encourage them to be a DM through this? Hey, you get this. You've been chosen as the DM of our next session. If you did share DM responsibilities, you could even have everybody vote on who is officially, the DM for the Hellfire Club as part of this game, which would be really neat if everybody shared in the DMing. But it's a nice concept that at the end of this, you kind of almost step back out of being characters and being players, that you were brought into the Hellfire Club, both in character and in player form. That's, I think, really cool. So my final thoughts on this set, it's a little bit like what I said at the beginning, but I think that this set really shines if you want that real Stranger Things experience, right? These are short adventures. They're simple in nature, which allows you to have a deep experience of this sort of Stranger Things concept, play style. I could see people playing the set and dropping quotes from the show. And, maybe the show episodes are playing on a side TV screen, so you can laugh about that as you're playing. I could see this being a lot of fun, right? It's sort of a pretzels and popcorn type of box set that you're just going to play through and enjoy. You're not getting sucked into a deep plot or super complex concepts or deep role playing. You're just having fun, running around, doing what the adventure says, having these experiences. And that is fun. Right. And in that sense, I think this adventure, this whole product is very good at delivering that specific experience. Does so really well. If what you're looking for, on the other hand, is, well, if you're not a fan of Stranger Things, but also if what you want is like, a deep, engrossing adventure, and the Stranger Things angle isn't much of a calling, then this probably isn't worth running. This may be a fun thing that you keep on your box, on your shelf, because it's a really pretty set, a neat looking product, but it's not something that would be the coolest thing to run, right? The components are really nice, but they are all very themed. So I wouldn't say, buy this because you want monster tokens and cards and monster cards and so on. Like you could, but everything is very themed to this experience. And so I think that's what this set does well, is provide this specific experience for people who want this out of it. Then fantastic, great product. If you want, a deeper adventure, then look at something like Tomb of Annihilation or something else, that's going to give that to you. But I think this is done. You can see the amount of love and care that went into this set. As with the starter set, you see a very carefully crafted experience, and I'm really loved seeing that in both these products that I've reviewed. I hope that future 5th edition 2024 products have the same amount of deliberate care and careful concept, right, of what is it that we're trying to create as an experience. I think both of those did that really well. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I will sometimes be reviewing D&D products like this. In this case, this product is one that I received a copy of, which I very much appreciate. I collect everything, so I do eventually buy just about everything that's created for D&D because I'm that kind of a collector. But and so I don't think that I'm biased because someone gave me a copy. I would have had it on my shelf. What bias, if there's any form of bias with this Stranger Things set, I think it comes from the fact that I got to hang out with 2 of the creators of this set, and they're such lovely people that spending time with them makes me want to like this product more. But I think I've been pretty objective in looking at this and seeing, what it is that I like about it and why I think you might like it. Hopefully you agree, and hopefully you look forward to not just 5e reviews, but also the different role-playing games that I like to talk about, and things like DM techniques. So that is hopefully interesting to you, as well as some industry analysis. If you like it, check out my blog, alphastream.org, where I've got a lot of DM tips and reviews and thoughts about the larger role-playing game hobby that I love being a part of. You can also check out my many videos here on this channel that are for creators. I have that as well. And to everybody who makes this possible by being a part of my Patreon, thank you so much. I would love to have you join us. We were just at GameholeCon with a lot of the people who support this channel, and it was a fantastic time to be part of that community that has, I feel so thankful, has been growing around these videos and the work that I do and the work that my friend from Mastering Dungeons, Sean Merwin, does. So we are so thankful for that. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you next time.